Welcome to this video on the Hittites. We're looking at a picture that could be depicting Hittites, a rock sculpture. A very interesting picture that we may come back to. Lots of interesting details on here to study. Now let's remind ourselves why we're going to be looking at the Hittites. We were speaking about a Cassie Sailor prince leaving an inscribed monument in the Don Valley of Scotland around 400 BC. And he's describing himself as a Hittite and a Barat. And we're speaking about Barat coming down to us as Briton. So this is why we're going to be looking at the Hittites, but now it's going to take us away from this region that we've been looking at. Let's start with the Bible. So we learn from Genesis that Heth is the second son of Canaan, who is the son of Ham, son of Noah. So the first thing we're thinking about for the Hittites would be that they would be Hamites. And it says here, Heth means terror. So the Hittites could have been a terrifying people to come across in the ancient world based on the name. I just want to show you the domain for the Hittites. Now this is what we've been presented with, that the Hittite Empire or domain would be predominantly in the modern day country of Turkey, but we are questioning this. But yeah, that's what we've been presented with. We're going to focus on the etymology, trying to trace the Hittites with their name. So we have these different variations we have to try to start to get used to of using. So Hitti, Hittites, Hatti, but to the Egyptians, Keta and Kita. Okay, so we're going to come back to that. We were using this source, the Phoenician origin of the Britons, Scots, and the Anglo-Saxons, where this picture is from, the source. I would like to read something from here. It's very interesting how it could connect the region that we were starting in, so Scotland, and then India. Let's read this. I then observed that the old ruling race of Asia Minor. Now when it says Asia Minor, that's what we questioning. So what we know is Anatolia or Asia Minor. So questioning this. And Syro-Phoenicia from immemorial time were the great imperial, highly civilized, ancient people generally known as the Hittites, but who called themselves the Kati. So this is another variation that we have to consider, the Kati, which is the self-same title by which the early Briton kings of the pre-Roman period called themselves. So now we're getting this reference to Britain with the Hittites again. Let me show you the coins that they're speaking about. So we see these pre-Roman coins, we see a Kati. So would this be the Hittites in Britain? But now it's going to say about the Arya, a race of Arya who first civilized India, calling themselves the Katiyo. And this is a warrior caste. And we can see the similarity with Kati and Kati here. So is there a connection between the Hittites and India? So we're going to explore that. We used this source before on the channel, Hittite Mystery, Were They Hindus? On this page it just explores different possible connections between the Hittites and the Hindus. But we can actually go to this Wikipedia page that shows it quite well. Now this is some evidence here for a treaty between the Hittites and the Mitanni. Now this kingdom of the Mitanni has been connected to the Medes, but then also potentially Medan and Midian, descendants of Abraham by his wife Keturah, so the sons of Keturah. But it says that the Hittites and the Mitanni were invoking these deities, Mitra, Varuna, and Indra. Now these are Vedic deities, or the deities of Hinduism. So now we see this connection with the Hittites and the Vedic, which is why this scholar or this researcher was asking, the Hittite mystery, were they Hindus? So can we find something on the historical record to connect the Hittites with India? And it is in this source that we're using. Very interesting source. Just want to read something here. I think I've got it highlighted. And I found that the father of the first historical Aryan king of India was the last historical king of the Hittites in Asia Minor, who was killed at the Karshemish on the upper Euphrates, on the final annexation of the last of the Hittite capitals to Assyria by Sargon II in 718 BC. So this is very interesting. So when the Hittite Empire is collapsing and their last strongholds are being defeated, are the Hittites going to look for a new homeland? And this is what the researcher or the scholar is saying, that he's found that the first historical Aryan king of India was the last historical king of the Hittites in Asia Minor. So did the Hittites migrate to India and then bring this language and this culture, which we know as Hinduism? So very interesting. And it gets more interesting because if we consider the names of India, we see that one of the names of India is Bharat, and that looks like to be very similar to the name that brought us here, the Bharat. So very, very interesting this, because this sailor prince in Scotland calling himself a Bharat, but now this is coming down to us in this region as Britannia or the Britons, but we also have the Bharat in northern India, and then India being called Bharat. So this is a connection here between these two let's say countries, because how did the British rule India? It's a very large region. We need some help from the scholars and the researchers that know the history of this region well. Is there a connection between the Bharats? So the Bharats of Britain and the Bharats of India, is that how Britain was able to rule this region? Yeah, so we need some help with that. But this is very interesting and important, because when we're learning history and we're doing these kind of studies, we can see how it does actually help with our perspective, even with considering world current affairs and politics, why there are alliances between certain countries. Even if they seem far away, they could actually be connected. But we are going into controversial areas here, because it's been obviously debated for a long time. Is it an Aryan invasion or a migration? And then, if you'd like to read this, the imagination of India, what's indigenous, what's foreign? Are the Hittites bringing, this language and this religion to this region, or having an influence on this region? So very, it could be important for our understanding the Hittites. But now another interesting thing to consider is the etymology with Kitza. We're going to follow this one because we have a dynasty called the Liao dynasty, the Khitan Empire. So we see here the Khitan, which seems to be similar to this Kitza. So is this a Hittite influence on China? Now I don't know if you can see it on your screen, but it's a very large empire which will be incorporating large parts of China, coming towards Japan. So the Khitan Empire, are the Hittites connected with this empire? So is it a further migration east? Is that what we're looking at? Is like a migration east for the Hittites? And then it's also interesting that Cathay is a historical name for China that was used in Europe. So the Europeans called China Cathay, and it could be coming from the Khitan. So how much has China been influenced by the Khitan or the Cathay or the Quetta, which are being connected to the Hittites? Now there is one way to explore this is with the language. To see this, we see connections between the Chinese and the Hittite. This scholar, Mr. Howarth, speaks about the Khitai or the Khitan, and shows that this Tartar Mongol people were in many respects very like the Keta of the Egyptian monuments. So now the Hittites being connected to, Tartar Mongol groups, but saying that they're very similar to the depictions of the Keta, which we're thinking, the Hittites by the Egyptians. So let's just try to learn about the way the Hittites were depicted, the way it's referencing here. If we go to this page, so it speaks about the original Hittites were a dark-skinned people who had yellow-brown skin tone. And I'm just going to read it as it's written, not going to change anything. So hopefully, people won't be offended, but we're just going to read it as it's written. Prominent noses, full lips, high cheekbones, fairly prominent eyebrows, forehead receding like the chin, and hairless faces. The hair is black, the eyes dark brown. So just thinking about the description, some of these descriptions, could that make sense with this migration and the people being considered Tartar Mongol, based on some of those descriptions? And then another Hittite language study saying it appears to be now admitted that the Hittites were a Tartar people and they belong to the Turco-Tartar group. So does that make sense with the Khitan Empire? So we can see it's going to incorporate large parts of China and Mongolia. So is this a migration of Turco-Tartar, or what we could say is Mongol? But then also are the Hittites connected with India? So is it like a great migration, and is it connected to maybe the collapse of the Hittite Empire? Or is there maybe even an earlier migration? So things that need to be investigated or answered. But one thing that we don't really, or we can't really answer, or the video hasn't quite been able to explain, why are the Hittites in Britain? So what brought us here was this Cassie Sailor prince calling himself a Barat and a Hittite, but this is in Britain. So that's something that we haven't quite been able to talk about in this video yet, is the Hittite connection to Britain. And that might have to we might have to go into another part for this to try to speak about that, because this description here seems to be describing the Haitians, which is like they're saying like the native people, and then there's a late Hittite people. So it does get a bit confusing that we have, let's say, like a native Hittite people, and then there's like a late Hittite, which is being described as Indo-European, and even down here as Nordic. So like the Northmen, the people of the north. So this could be something that we need to consider, because that would start to make sense with that information that brought us here with this Hittite, Barat, Cassie Sailor prince in Scotland, because now we're in the region of the north, the region of the Norsemen or the Northmen. But then yes, it does mean that we have to try to figure this out. It's quite confusing, because then you have what seems to be maybe different branches of the Hittites, or are there late Hittites? And we'll just finish with this quote, because it might be a reasonable warning that we should consider. It says, "Every treatise on the Hittites should begin with a warning to the reader about pitfalls posed by the term Hittite, which often seems to connotate something quite different to each scholar. It is possible to identify at least 4 distinct ethnic groups in antiquity to whom the name Hittite has at some time been applied." So the Hittite being applied to different ethnic groups, I think we've kind of seen that with this video, where we're seeing different ethnic groups like Tartar, Mongol, Turco-Tartar, and then also they're being described as an Indo-European people. So they're like being connected into different peoples or regions. So we've just started. I think we've learned quite a lot in this video. I think we'll go into another part where we have to try to understand the Nordic aspect to this, or how it describes late Hittites or Indo-European Hittites. because that's going to bring us back to the region that we started with this Celtic world. So I hope you found this video interesting on the Hittites. I've just written this summary so we can start to work with this summary, so we can remember what we have to carry forward with these different names. It's going to be important that we think about these different names for the Hittites. And then, yeah, very interesting, this connection between Britain, India, and China. Let me know what you think about that. And if anyone out there has knowledge on this region for India, how did the British rule this large region? Is there a connection with the Bharats? So thank you for watching this video, and we'll see you in the next one.